The morning of my father's 70th birthday, I was on my hands and knees in the kitchen with a roll of double-sided tape, trying to get a glittery cardboard 7 and 0 to stay stuck on the front of a sheet cake I had picked up from Publix 2 hours earlier. My son Caleb was sitting on the floor next to me in his good navy pants and the white button-down he had insisted on ironing himself with my supervision the night before. He was holding the box of sparkler candles like it was a sacred relic, and every few minutes he would open the lid, check that all 12 were still inside, and close it again. "Mom," he said, for maybe the 4th time, "what if they go off too fast?" "They won't, buddy. They burn for like 30 seconds. But what if? Then we light another one. We have 12. Grandpa is 70. We're fine." He nodded the way he did when he was filing information away seriously. He was 8, and he had been preparing for this birthday party for almost 6 weeks. My father, who was not a sentimental man and who had spent most of his life avoiding fuss, had told Caleb back in early September that he wanted his grandson to be the one to light the candles on his 70th. Not the cake cutter, not the toast giver, the candle lighter. Caleb had taken it on like a job. He had read a kid's book about fire safety from the library twice through. He had practiced striking a long fireplace lighter exactly the way I had shown him, my hand over his, in our backyard. He had picked out the sparkler candles himself at the party store, comparing 2 brands, and chosen the more expensive ones because the package said longer burn time. I was a single mom. I had been since Caleb was almost 3, and his father had moved to Phoenix with someone he met at a conference. I worked as a hygienist at a dental office in Cary, North Carolina, 4 days a week, and I'd taken the Saturday afternoon off to drive Caleb the 45 minutes to my parents' house in Raleigh for this party. My mother had been planning it for 2 months. She had a binder. She had a Pinterest board. She had ordered the wrong color of napkins twice and made my father stand in the kitchen on a Tuesday night while she compared 2 shades of champagne against the curtains. The cake situation had been a small concession. My mother wanted a custom cake from a bakery in Briar Creek that did fondant work. My father had said, very quietly and very firmly, that he wanted a regular sheet cake from the grocery store, the kind he had grown up with, vanilla with that thick white buttercream that gets the corners of your mouth. He had said it once, and my mother, to her credit, had let him have it. I had been the one assigned to pick it up, which was how I ended up on my kitchen floor at 11 in the morning trying to make a cheap, glittery 7-stick to refrigerated buttercream. Caleb watched me work. Is Grandpa going to be surprised? He knows we're coming. But yes, the cake part, the candle part. He'll be surprised by you, because I learned how to do it right. Because you learned how to do it right. He smiled the small private smile he did when he was proud of himself, but didn't want to show it too much. I put the cake back in the box, taped it closed gently so the lid wouldn't smear the icing, and loaded it into the trunk of my Corolla on a folded beach towel so it wouldn't slide. Caleb climbed into the back seat with the candle box in his lap. He held it like a passenger. We drove down I-40 in the kind of October sunlight that makes everything look like a postcard. The leaves on the dogwoods had started to turn, and I had my window cracked because I always do when the weather is finally tolerable after a North Carolina summer. Caleb hummed along to the radio. He asked me, twice, whether I thought Grandpa would cry. I told him probably not, that Grandpa was a crying on the inside type, but he might get red around the eyes, which was Grandpa's version. Caleb seemed satisfied by that. I want to tell you something about my brother before I tell you what happened next, because otherwise the rest of it won't land the way it should. My brother Trevor is 2 years younger than me. He is the kind of person things have always worked out for, in the very particular way things work out for people who other people have decided will be okay. He is charming. He has a real estate license. He married a woman named Allison, whose family owns a chain of car washes in 3 counties, and they live in a 4-bedroom house in North Hills that my mother helped them buy by quietly pulling $30,000 out of her retirement fund 3 years ago. I learned about that $30,000 from my father, by accident, the Thanksgiving after it happened. My mother had never mentioned it. When I'd asked her about it later, she had told me, with mild irritation, that I had a stable job and Trevor was building something. She said it like the words explained themselves. Trevor and Allison had a daughter named Hadley who was 6. Hadley was a sweet kid, actually. None of what happened was her fault. I want to say that now, before I tell the rest, because she's a child and she didn't ask for any of it. We pulled up to my parents' house just after 1. The driveway was already half full. My Aunt Marjorie's Lexus was there, my cousin Brad's truck, Trevor's Tahoe, and a silver SUV I didn't recognize, which I assumed belonged to one of my father's old college friends. There were maybe 20 cars parked along the curb of the cul-de-sac, which meant my mother had hit her invite list hard. I parked behind the mailbox and helped Caleb out of his seatbelt. "You ready?" I asked him. He nodded once. He had the candle box tucked under his arm like a quarterback with a football. We came in through the side door, the one that opens into the kitchen. My mother was at the island, arranging crackers on a tiered tray. She looked up when she heard us, and I watched her face do something. Just for a second, the kind of micro-adjustment people make when they've been hoping a thing would handle itself, and now they see that the thing has arrived in their kitchen, carrying a cake box. "Hi, honey," she said. She came around the island and kissed the air next to my cheek, and then she crouched down and made a big production over Caleb's outfit. "Look at this handsome young man. Look at this tie. It's a clip-on," Caleb told her seriously, "but it looks real. It looks very real," my mother said. "Sweetie, can you do me a favor? Mrs. Pendergrass is in the living room and she would love to see you. She brought you something." "What is it? It's a surprise? Why don't you go say hi? Mom and I need to do some grown-up things in the kitchen for a minute." Caleb looked at me. I gave him the small nod, and he set the candle box down on the kitchen island with great care, like a chemist setting down a vial, and trotted into the living room. I heard Mrs. Pendergrass start exclaiming over him almost immediately. My mother turned to me. The micro-adjustment was back, settled into her features now in a way I recognized from years of family events. It was the face she made when she was about to explain something to me. "Sweetheart," she said, "I need to talk to you about something quickly before everything starts." "Okay." Allison brought Hadley today, obviously, and Hadley's been having such a hard week. Allison's mom is in the hospital again, the heart thing, and Hadley has just been really clingy and sad, and she saw the cake when they came in and asked about the candles. I waited. I already knew. I knew the way you know a phone is about to ring sometimes, the small tightening before the bell. And Allison thought, and I think she's right, that it would be really sweet, especially today, with everything going on, if Hadley got to be the one to light the candles with Grandpa, just to give her something to be excited about. She's been so down. The kitchen was warm. The oven was on for something. I could smell whatever it was. A brie, maybe, or those little sausage things and puff pastry my mother makes for every occasion. My hands were resting on the edge of the island, on the cool granite, and I could feel the cool of it through my fingertips like an anchor. "Caleb is supposed to light the candles," I said. Dad asked him. "In September, he's been practicing." "I know, honey, I know he's been excited, but he's 8. He'll have a lot more birthdays. Hadley is 6, and she's having a really, really tough time. Did Dad agree to this?" She hesitated. It was a small hesitation, but I caught it. "Your father wants the day to go smoothly. He doesn't want a scene." "That's not what I asked. Hadley already has the lighter. Trevor gave it to her in the den. I just wanted you to know before you came in, so it wasn't a surprise. I want to tell you that I said something dignified in that moment. I want to tell you that I stood up for my son the way you imagine you would, the way you tell yourself you would if it ever happened to you. But what I actually did was stand there with my hands on the granite and try to make my face do nothing for about 6 seconds, because my mother was watching me, and because Mrs. Pendergrass was 30 feet away in the living room with my son, and because the brie was about to burn. "Meet a minute," I said. "I'm going to go to the bathroom." "Sweetheart, I'm going to go to the bathroom, Mom." "Don't talk to Caleb about it. I'll talk to him." I walked down the hallway past the living room without looking in. I went into the guest bathroom. The one with the seashell soaps no one is allowed to use, and I closed the door and locked it and sat down on the closed toilet and put my face in my hands. I did not cry. I do not cry easily, and I especially do not cry in my parents' house. I just sat there for about 2 minutes and breathed. Then I took out my phone and texted my best friend Whitney one word, here. She knew about the candles. She'd been hearing about them for 6 weeks. She wrote back almost instantly. What? I wrote, they gave the lighter to Hadley. Mom just told me in the kitchen. The 3 dots came up and disappeared and came up again. Then, oh honey, oh no, is C okay? I wrote, he doesn't know yet. I sat with the phone in my hands and I tried to think about how I was going to tell him. He was 8 years old in a clip-on tie sitting on a sofa with a woman who used to be his Sunday school teacher, and I was about to walk in there and tell him that the job he had practiced for, the job his grandfather had given him on purpose, had been moved to his cousin because his cousin was having a sad week. I came out of the bathroom. I went into the living room. Caleb was holding up a small plastic figurine of a soldier that Mrs. Pendergrass had apparently given him, and she was telling him about her grandson who collected them. Caleb was being polite in his serious 8-year-old way, nodding and saying wow at the right intervals. Hey buddy, I said, come outside with me for a sec, okay? I need your help with something in the car. He hopped down. He thanked Mrs. Pendergrass for the soldier. He held it carefully in one hand as he followed me out the front door, down the porch steps, and onto the lawn. The afternoon was bright and clear, and a few of my father's friends were out on the back deck, audible but not visible. I led Caleb around to the side of the house where the gardenias were and where no one would see us, and I crouched down so I was eye to eye with him. What's wrong? He said. He could tell. He's always been able to tell. Buddy, something changed about the candles. And I have to tell you, and I'm sorry. He went very still. Did I do something wrong? No, baby, no. You didn't do anything. You did everything right. You learned how. You practiced. You picked the candles. I touched his cheek. Aunt Allison's mom is sick. And Hadley is sad about it. And Aunt Allison asked Grandma if Hadley could light the candles today instead because Hadley needs something to feel good about. He looked at me. He was processing. He was 8, and he was processing. So I can't do it? Not today. But Grandpa asked me. I know, buddy. I know he did. He looked down at the plastic soldier in his hand. He moved it slightly, watched its little plastic rifle catch the sun. Is Grandpa going to be mad at you? No, never. Not in a million years. Is he going to be mad at Hadley? No, honey. Hadley didn't do anything either. She didn't ask for this. The grown-ups decided. He nodded, slowly, with that resignation that breaks your heart because it's already there in an 8-year-old. Like he had figured out some time ago that grown-ups deciding things was a category he didn't have a vote in. Can I still help Grandpa with the cake? He asked. You can absolutely still help with the cake. You can hand him things. You can stand right next to him. Okay. He stood there with the soldier in his hand and his clip-on tie slightly crooked, and he didn't cry. 8-year-olds don't cry the way movies tell you they do. They go quiet. They get smaller. He nodded one more time, like he was confirming a transaction. Mom? Yeah? Can you fix my tie? I fixed his tie. My hands were not steady, but they were steady enough. I straightened the clip and smoothed his collar, and I kissed the top of his head, and he let me. We went back inside. The party had thickened, the way parties do, into a loud humming animal. My father was in his recliner in the corner of the living room with a glass of bourbon and a small plate of crackers that he was eating one at a time. He raised his hand when he saw us. He patted the arm of the chair next to him, and Caleb went and sat on it, holding the little soldier, and my father, who had been a Marine in his 20s and had not lost his eye for small details, looked at my face, and then at my son's face, and then back at my face. And his expression shifted by about 1 millimeter. Everything all right? He said. Yeah, Dad, just a long drive. He looked at me for another beat. Then he turned to Caleb. What do you got there, son? Caleb held up the soldier and explained with great precision the details Mrs. Pendergrass had relayed about her grandson. My father listened the way he always listened to Caleb, fully. Like nothing in the world was more interesting. He asked follow-up questions. Caleb answered them. I stood there watching them and trying to swallow the thing in my throat. Allison came over with a small plate of cheese cubes for Hadley, who was trailing behind her in a pink dress, the fireplace lighter held carefully in both her hands like an offering. I noted, almost clinically, that Allison was not making eye contact with me. Hadley was, though. Hadley was looking at me with the slightly confused expression of a 6-year-old who has been handed something she doesn't fully understand the weight of. Aunt Reese, Hadley said, Grandma said I get to do the candles. That's great, sweetie. That's gonna be really special. Caleb said he was gonna do it. I felt my ex-husband, force of habit, would have made a joke here. He was good at jokes in tense rooms. I was not. I crouched down a little. Caleb's gonna help Grandpa with the cake, I said. You'll do the candles. It's all going to be wonderful. Hadley nodded seriously, the way kids do when they're being given grown-up information they're not sure what to do with, and she turned and trotted back to Allison. Allison still wouldn't look at me. She busied herself with a napkin. I went into the kitchen. I needed to put down the bag of presents I had been carrying since I came back in from the lawn, and I needed to not be in the room with my son and the lighter for 1 minute. My mother was at the counter spreading something onto crostini. She glanced up at me. Thank you for being understanding, she said. I really do appreciate it. I didn't answer. I set the bag down. I started to walk back out, and she said in a slightly lower voice, Reese, he's 8. He'll forget about it by next week. He won't forget about it. You're being dramatic. I'm not being anything, Mom. I'm walking out of the kitchen. I walked out of the kitchen. For the next 40 minutes, I made small talk. I talked to my cousin Brad about his roofing business. I talked to my Aunt Marjorie about her hip. I talked to a man I had never met before who turned out to have served with my father in 1979 and who told me 3 separate stories about him I had never heard. I held a glass of wine and I drank exactly half of it. I watched Caleb. He was sitting near my father, occasionally on the arm of his chair, occasionally on the floor at his feet, and he was behaving the way a small boy behaves when he is determined to not be a problem. It was, I realized, the same way I behaved at my parents' house, the exact same posture. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I assumed it was Whitney. I pulled it out. It was from my father. I looked across the room at him. He was in his chair, looking down at his phone like he was reading something on it, his face perfectly neutral. The text said, "Meet me in the garage. Now, please." I have not received many texts from my father in my life. I have received 0 texts from him during a party at his own house. I put my phone back in my pocket. I told my Aunt Marjorie I was going to grab another drink. I went through the kitchen, past my mother, who was now arranging things on a platter and not looking at me, past the laundry room, and out the door into the garage. The garage was cooler than the house. It smelled like motor oil and old cardboard. My father was already standing by the workbench, his bourbon still in his hand. He must have moved faster than I'd seen. "Dad," I said. "Shut the door," he said. Not harshly, just clearly. I shut the door. He looked at me. The garage light was off, and we were standing in the slatted afternoon light coming through the small windows up near the ceiling. He looked old to me in that light, in a way he had not looked old to me before. He set the bourbon down on the workbench. "Your mother told me about Caleb." "Okay, she told me about 10 minutes ago. She told me she had handled it with you." That's the word she used, handled. I didn't say anything. "How did Caleb take it?" "He didn't cry. He asked me if he had done something wrong. Then he asked me if you would be mad. Then he asked me to fix his tie." My father exhaled, slowly, through his nose, in a way I had heard him do exactly 3 times in my life. Once was when his own father had died. Once was when he had been told his prostate biopsy came back fine after a week of believing it would not. The 3rd time was now. I asked him in September, he said. I sat him down at the picnic table. I told him exactly what the job was. I told him I picked him because he was the right person for it. I know, Dad. I didn't tell your mother to change it. I didn't tell your brother to change it. Your brother walked up to me in the den about 45 minutes ago and told me, like he was telling me the weather, that Hadley was going to do the candles because Allison's mother was in the hospital and Hadley was sad and it would mean a lot. Like it was already decided. Like I was being informed. His voice was not loud. It was the quietest I had ever heard him speak about something that mattered. And I sat there in my chair and I nodded at him because I have spent 40 years in this family nodding at things to keep your mother from having a bad afternoon. And the second your brother walked away, I knew I had done it again. I have spent my whole life doing it. I did it about that $30,000 for the house. I did it about the Christmas your mother told you not to come because Allison was overwhelmed. I have done it and done it and done it, and I am tired of it. I felt something hot behind my eyes that I shoved back down. Dad, I'm not done. He reached into the chest pocket of his sport coat. He took out a folded sheet of paper. It looks like printer paper, folded into thirds. 2 weeks ago, he said, I went to see Carl Whitman. You remember Carl? He did our house closing in '99. He's been my attorney for 35 years. Dad, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I'm doing it anyway. He held the paper. He did not unfold it. I changed my will, not because of today, because of a long list of things, and today is just the last one I'm willing to add to the list. The Cavan and Boone goes to you, the whole thing. Not split, not held in some trust your brother gets access to. Yours. I did it 2 weeks ago, and I was going to tell you next month, but I'm telling you now because today did something to me and I'm not waiting. The Cavan and Boone. My grandfather had built it in 1962. 3 rooms, a stone fireplace, a tin roof that sounded like applause when it rained. I had not been there in 5 years because my mother had decided Trevor's family needed it more for school breaks. The last time Caleb had been there, he had been 3 years old, and I had taken a picture of him in a tiny life jacket holding a fishing rod that was longer than he was. Dad, there's one more thing. He reached into the inside pocket of the same coat. He took out a small object wrapped in a faded blue handkerchief. He held it out to me. I took it. I unwrapped it carefully. It was a pocket watch. Brass, scratched, with a small dent on the back near the winding stem. I had seen it my whole life. It had sat on my grandfather's dresser. After he died, when I was 12, my father had carried it in his pocket every day for years, and at some point in my 20s, it had disappeared from his rotation. I had assumed it was in a box somewhere. I had asked once, casually, where it had gone. He had said something vague and changed the subject. That watch, my father said, belonged to your grandfather. Before him, it belonged to his father. It came over from Naples in 1908. I closed my hand around it. The brass was warm from his pocket. 6 years ago, your mother took it out of my dresser and gave it to your brother as a graduation gift for finishing his real estate program. She did not ask me. I found out 2 days later when I went to look for it. By the time I asked her about it, she had already given it to him, and your brother had already put it in his desk drawer at the office. I let it go. I told myself it was a watch. I told myself that you don't fight over a watch. He paused. Last week, I drove to your brother's office and I asked him for it back. I told him it had been promised to someone else. I told him it should never have left my dresser. He gave it back to me without an argument, which I will give him credit for. And I have been carrying it around for 8 days, waiting for the right moment to give it to its real owner. I looked down at the watch in my hand. The second hand was moving. He had wound it. Dad, I said, and my voice did something I hadn't given it permission to do. He put his hand on my shoulder. Not a pat. A hand. He left it there. I want to go back inside, he said, and I want you with me. I'm going to say something, and I would like my daughter standing next to me when I do it. Dad, you don't have to make a scene. I am not making a scene. I am making a correction. There is a difference, and I am old enough now to know it. He picked up his bourbon. He walked to the door. He waited. I wrapped the watch back in a handkerchief and put it in the front pocket of my dress, where I could feel it against my hip. I followed him to the laundry room and back into the house. The living room was in the middle of itself. Someone had put music on, something old, Sinatra maybe. Hadley was on the floor near the coffee table, with the fireplace lighter in her lap, and Trevor was crouched next to her, demonstrating something. Caleb was standing by the window with a cracker on a small plate, watching them. He was being good. He was being so good it nearly broke me. My father walked into the middle of the room. He did not raise his voice. He did not tap his glass. He simply stopped in a particular spot, near the cake table where my mother had set everything up, and he stood there. Within about 15 seconds, the conversations nearest him slowed. Within 30, the ones farther away. Sinatra kept singing. No one knew yet that the room had changed. "Folks," my father said, "I'm not going to make a long speech. Anybody who knows me knows that already." Polite scattered laughter. "My grandson Caleb is 8 years old. Some of you have met him today. He's been practicing how to use a long lighter for about 6 weeks because I asked him, back in September, if he would do me the honor of lighting the candles on my birthday cake today. He took that job seriously. He read a book about it. He picked the candles out himself." The room had gone quiet, the kind of quiet that is wait. This afternoon, while I was sitting in my chair in this living room, my son walked up to me and informed me that the job had been given to someone else, because someone else was having a rough week. He didn't ask me. He told me, and I want to be clear with everyone here, including my son and my wife, that I did not agree to that change, and I do not agree to it now. Trevor was standing up slowly, his face doing several different things at once. My mother had come out of the kitchen and was standing in the archway between the rooms with a dish towel in her hands. She was very still. "Hadley," my father said, and his voice softened. "Honey, can you come here for a second?" Hadley looked at her mother. Allison nodded slightly. Hadley got up and walked over to my father, carrying the lighter with both hands. My father bent down so he was closer to her level. He spoke to her gently. "Sweetheart, I love you very much. You did nothing wrong today. Okay? Nothing. I'm so glad you're here. But Caleb and I had a deal that I made with him in September. And a deal is a deal even when it's an 8-year-old's deal. So I'm going to ask you to give the lighter back to Caleb, and I'm going to give you a very special job instead. I need someone to hold the cake plate steady for me when I cut the first slice. Can you do that?" Hadley nodded. She had the very serious, slightly relieved face of a child who has been carrying something too heavy without realizing it. She walked across the room to Caleb. She held the lighter out to him with both hands. He took it from her with both of his. "Thank you," he said to her, the way he had been raised to. "You're welcome," she said back, the way she had been. My father stood up to his full height again. He looked at my brother. "Trevor," he said, "I love you. You are my son. You will always be my son. And I am telling you, in front of every person in this room who I love, that you are 41 years old, and it is time for you to stop having your mother and your sister manage the consequences of your decisions. Today was a small thing. There have been bigger things. I am done participating." Trevor's mouth opened. It closed. He did not speak. My father turned to my mother. "Linda," he said, and I felt her flinch from across the room because he almost never called her by her name. "I have loved you for 46 years. I will love you for whatever I have left. But you cannot keep telling our daughter that her job is to be gracious about things that are not graceful. She is gracious. She has been gracious her whole life. It has not made her happy, and it has not made us better. I am asking you, in front of these people, to stop." My mother's hands tightened on the dish towel. She did not say anything. Her eyes were very bright. "Now," my father said, his voice shifting again, easier. "I would like my grandson to come over here and help me with these candles, because I would very much like to be 70 years old and eat some cake." Caleb walked across the room. His shoulders were back. His clip-on tie was straight because I had fixed it. He stood beside his grandfather. My father put his hand on Caleb's back, briefly, and then nodded at the cake. Whenever you're ready, son. Caleb lit the first sparkler. It went up bright and crackling, throwing little stars into the dim afternoon room. He lit the second one off the first. He worked his way down the line. Careful, deliberate, exactly the way he had practiced in our backyard. And by the time he got to the 12th candle, the whole cake was a small, bright field of stars. And my father was looking at him the way I have always wanted someone to look at my son. Everyone sang. Even Trevor sang quietly at the back. My father blew the candles out in one breath, and Caleb beamed up at him, and my father bent down and kissed the top of his head the way I had kissed him on the side lawn 45 minutes earlier. We cut the cake. Hadley held the plate steady, exactly as promised, and my father praised her work, and Allison watched her daughter with the small-held breath of a mother who has realized her child is going to be all right. Trevor came over to me about an hour later. He found me in the kitchen where I was rinsing forks. "Reese," he said. "Trevor." He stood there for a long second. He looked tired. He looked, for the first time in a long time, like my actual brother, the one who used to sleep in the bottom bunk and who once threw up on me on a road trip to Myrtle Beach in 1996. "I should not have done that," he said, "about the candles. I just walked in and made it Allison's idea, and made it Mom's idea, and made it everybody's idea but mine. And it was mine. I'm the one who said it first to Allison. I'm sorry." I dried my hands. I looked at him. "It's not me you need to say that to, Trevor. It's a kid in a clip-on tie." He nodded slowly. He went to find Caleb. We left around 6. Caleb was in that floaty post-sugar, post-attention state that 8-year-olds get into after big days, and he fell asleep in the back of the Corolla before we hit I-40. My father walked us out to the car. He hugged me, which he doesn't do often, and he hugged me longer than he usually does. And then he leaned in and kissed Caleb's forehead through the open back door. "Drive safe," he said. "I will. I'll call you Tuesday. I'll pick up." He stood at the end of the driveway as I pulled away, one hand raised, the streetlight just coming on behind him. I drove home with the pocket watch in my purse on the passenger seat. I could feel it there. I could feel it the way you feel a small warm animal sleeping. 2 weeks later, on a Tuesday, I put the watch on the kitchen windowsill above the sink, where the morning light catches it. Caleb noticed it the next morning while eating his cereal. He pointed his spoon at it. "What's that?" "It was your great-grandfather's, and his father's before him. Grandpa gave it to me." He chewed thoughtfully. "Is it mine someday?" "Someday." "Yeah, buddy. Someday it's yours." He nodded. He went back to his cereal. My father calls every Tuesday now, around 7. He and Caleb have a running conversation about a red-shouldered hawk that has been hunting in his backyard. Caleb has named it Captain. My father sends pictures. He printed out a page about red-shouldered hawks from a bird book at the library, the same way he used to do for me when I was small, and mailed it in an envelope with Caleb's name on the front in his big, careful handwriting. Caleb keeps it taped to his bedroom door. My mother and I are not what we were. I do not know yet what we will be. We talk on the phone sometimes. She has not apologized, not in the way I would want her to, and I am no longer sure she's capable of it in that shape. But she came to Caleb's school play in November, and she sat next to me, and at the end she squeezed my hand once, and I let her. That is what we have right now. Trevor and I are slow, we text. He took Caleb to a Hurricanes game in December, just the two of them, and Caleb came home with a foam finger and a story about an arena hot dog that he told me twice. I think Trevor is trying. I think Trevor is not the same as being trustworthy yet. We will see. The lighter is in a drawer in my kitchen. Caleb asked if he could keep it. I said yes. He uses it now to light the candle on his birthday cake every January, and he uses it to light the menorah at my friend Whitney's house every December, because Whitney's wife is Jewish and they invite us over for the first night every year. And Caleb has decided he is honored to be the family lighter. He lights things carefully. He learned how. That is what my father gave him in the end. Not the candles, not the watch on the windowsill, the thing underneath both of them. the thing my father had to be 70 years old to give, and that I am 33 years old learning how to receive. It is, as he said in the garage, a correction, and we are still inside of it, my son and I, learning what comes next. I've thought about that afternoon in my parents' kitchen more times than I can count. The granite under my hands, the smell of brie, the way my mother said the word handled like it was a kindness she was doing me. And what I keep coming back to is this: the moment didn't come out of nowhere. It came out of 40 years of small moments, each one excused, each one smoothed over, each one allowed to set like concrete. Trevor didn't walk up to my father in the den that day and casually reassign an 8-year-old's job because he was a cruel person. He did it because he had been taught every day of his life that he could. My mother didn't sweep Caleb's candles away because she didn't love my son. She did it because she had spent 46 years learning that her job was to keep things smooth, and she had stopped being able to tell the difference between smooth and right. That is how cause and effect actually works in families, I think. Slowly, by accumulation. By the 1,000 times someone says nothing, what I keep wanting to tell Caleb when he is older and ready to hear it is that the dignity my father showed in that garage and in that living room did not appear out of nowhere either. My father had been a man who nodded along to keep the peace for most of his life. He had let the watch go. He had let the $30,000 go. He had let 100 Christmases go where I went home stinging from something my mother had said. But the day he sat in his chair and watched his 8-year-old grandson stand quietly by a window with a cracker on a plate, something in him reached the end of itself. That is what nerve looks like in a real person, not a thunderclap, a long, slow filling of a glass, and then one drop more. I want Caleb to learn 3 things from what happened. I want him to learn that being good is not the same as being quiet. His grandfather was quiet for too long, and the quiet did not protect anyone. I want him to learn to see clearly, which means learning to tell when someone is asking you to be gracious about something that has no grace in it. And I want him to learn that you can be steady, that when something is taken from you unfairly, you do not have to make yourself smaller to make other people comfortable. You can fix your tie and walk back into the room and wait for the people who love you to find their voices. I am 33 years old and I am still learning all 3 of those things. I think I will be learning them for the rest of my life. But the watch is on my windowsill and my son knows where it came from, and the next time someone tries to handle us, I will not need a text from my father to know what to do.